When you take the night train to Belarus, you leave 21st century Europe and go backwards in time. And travel towards a Soviet tyranny of political prisoners and torture, a land where people disappear. I'm going undercover, crossing the border at midnight. My papers scrutinized just as they would have been at Checkpoint Charlie. In Belarus, the eternal flame burns in memory of Stalin's great victory over the Nazis. But here, they still goose step. It seems peaceful, but last year the capital's metro was rocked by a bomb. 15 people were killed. This is the tube stop where the bombing happened. The question is, who did it? Meet the president, Alexander Lukashenko. He calls himself Batka. You could translate that as Big Daddy. He started out the boss of a pig farm, where they say he beat up his workers. And here's Mini-Me. That's the next president stuffing the ballot, little Nikolai, his youngest son. This Mini-Me is, they say, a victim of Big Daddy's monomania. Here is 8-year-old Nikolai escorting his father to become president again. Here he is meeting the Pope. Doing an arms deal with the then Russian president, the boy with a golden gun. And giving revolutionary support to Hugo Chavez. It's a dynasty in the making. But the darkest place Big Daddy took Nikolai to was here, the metro in Minsk, a few hours after a bomb went off in April last year, killing 15. Within 48 hours, Lukashenko went on TV to thank the KGB for capturing the bombers and vow they would face the most extreme punishment. State TV showed the arrest of the suspects it called terrorists. The alleged bomber, Dima Konovalov, didn't want to give up his name. But his flatmate and alleged accomplice, Vlad Kovalyov, was more forthcoming.
Konovalov Dima.
1 month after the bomb, the Secretary General of Interpol, Ronald K. Noble, arrived in Minsk for a briefing on the terrorists. A former American law enforcement official, Noble praised the state's investigation.
I can tell all the citizens of Belarus that this case was solved so quickly because of the high professionalism of the police and officials in the Ministry of Internal Affairs and other ministries, because of the technology and the CCTVs that you have in place.
4 months later, the trial started of the two accused, Vlad, the accomplice, and Dima, the bomber. And the men proclaimed guilty were duly found guilty. But some in Belarus were not convinced by what they say was a 21st century show trial. The bomb had gone off at rush hour in October Station, the city's busiest stop. It was Belarus's 7-7. This is the tube stop where the bombing happened. The question is, who did it? One woman is running a lonely campaign to prove that the two bombers were innocent. We drive 3 hours towards the Russian border. Her home has been watched by the Belarusian KGB for months. She's told us the coast is clear for now. Lyuba Kovalova is the mother of Vlad, the alleged bomber's accomplice. I put to her that the two men had faced a fair trial.
The court has not a single piece of proof of guilt, not only of my son, who was dragged into this, but also of Dima Konovalov, apart from Dima's confession which he gave under torture.
For Lyuba, it starts with Lukashenko.
Lukashenko said that the boys had been interrogated, and by 5 o'clock they had already confessed. They were interrogated without lawyers. Over that time they were just beaten. The boys had no choice, otherwise they would have been beaten more and more and more until they confessed.
The two men were paraded on TV, confessing to their crimes from a psychiatric ward.
Dmitry came back into the room with a plastic remote control in his hands. He pressed it a few times and gave it to me to hold. He said it was a detonator for the bomb.
So why would anyone confess to a bombing they had no part in?
Президент Республики Беларусь Александр Григорьевич Лукашенко.
In December 2010, elections were held, and yet again, President Lukashenko claimed victory with 4 out of 5 votes. The opposition cried foul and hit the streets. A crackdown started, 700 arrested, including 7 presidential candidates. Opposition activist Vlad Kubets was picked up by the KGB that night. He's fled the country, but he drew us a map of how to find what he claims is the regime's torture center.
Right side you will see McDonald's, from left side Fridays. After 2 streets from left side you will see Alex Dzerzhinsky monument, founder of KGB.
Because I'm here undercover, we can't film openly. But I follow Vlad's directions and go for a stroll along the capital's main street.
After one building, you will see next this place when everybody from us was imprisoned after elections.
This is the KGB head office. Very grand. But behind the fancy columns lies the secret prison. You can't see it from the street, but you can from Google Earth. They call it the Amerikanka, after a circular prison in Chicago that Stalin's secret police admired. So where were the alleged bombers, Vlad and Dima, held on the night of their arrest?
In the Amerikanka. From their arrest to when the sentence was carried out, they were held at the KGB isolation unit, the Amerikanka.
So what's it like, being a guest of the Amerikanka?
First of all, this is a very small place. Amerikanka, there's only 18 rooms.
When I first got there, somebody told me to look at the ceiling, and you can see what looks like the lid of a coffin in which you have been buried alive.
Natalia Radzina was another member of the opposition taken to the Amerikanka. She too has fled the country. The guards demanded submission from the prisoners.
We had to walk like this, our hands behind our backs and head down. We were forbidden from lifting our heads in any circumstances.
So you can't see them? You always your head down?
Да.
Night and day, guards wearing masks would enter the cell and drag the prisoners out. What could you hear at night?
Были слышны крики.
You could hear shouts, because every time the men prisoners were taken down for exercise or research, you could hear them being tortured. You could hear the crackles of electroshockers and the blow of batons.
You're taken downstairs to a cold room, where you're lined up against the wall, your legs stretched wide apart. They make sure your head is lowered, and your legs are widely enough spaced out. And after that they undress you, one by one. And all the rest stand there as you're stripped naked.
Another inmate drew us a picture of the strip torture. He's still in Belarus, and we're protecting his identity.
You're completely naked, and they put you in position like this. And if they think that your legs are not spread wide enough, they just kick your legs and they go even wider. Even several seconds in such position is not very pleasant.
The opposition in Belarus say they were tortured by being forced to strip naked in freezing conditions. So we go to a Coles store in North London where the temperature is minus 24 Celsius. So the guards force the prisoners to strip naked and stand in this position, spread eagles. In minus 20 there was snow outside. In the jargon of torture, this is a stress position. You might not think that standing like this is torture, but add to the cold, guards in balaclavas kicking your legs apart, electric cattle prods buzzing around your privates, and all this several times a day, night and day. Don't doubt it. This is torture. That's enough. And I lasted 40 seconds. I lasted 40 seconds. For the prisoners, they had to endure that for 40 minutes. So is it possible that the KGB tortured confessions out of Dima and Vlad? Other prisoners of the Amerikanka that night said screams came from the cells where the two men were being held, and in the middle of the night an ambulance was called. We can't verify torture, but we can verify timing. The state said that Dima planted the bomb at 1756 and then walked home, arriving at 1800. I put that to the test. I left the tube station 26 minutes ago. The government's case, Dmitry made this journey by walking in 4 minutes. It makes no sense. Vlad's lawyer, Konstantin Obrazets, here in the white shirt, started going through the CCTV evidence praised by the man from Interpol, and soon began to pick more holes in the official version. The time, 1739, the bomber enters the metro carrying a black bag. Watch the white mark on the bag. Now you see the white mark? (1744), now you don't. There is something immediately and obviously wrong about the official version. (1745), the bomber is hanging around. Another man walks past him, looks at him, and the bomber sets off after him. It's as if he's taking directions. 1746, the bomber is apparently led by another man, turning abruptly in front of him in the tunnel. 1748, the bomber walking down to the platform where the bomb goes off. See the bag. The white mark is back. All of these questions about the CCTV, Luba says, were blocked by the judge. One striking clash of evidence the defence wanted to run. The bomber seems tall, while Dima is short. The Russian security service, the FSB, compared the bomber on the CCTV with Dima for the court and could not match the two.
Фотографии, которые человека с сумкой в метро.
The FSB said the man filmed with the bag in the metro and Dima Konovalov do not match. They are of different heights and build. The man with the bag and Dima are different people.
Человека с сумкой и Димы. То есть это разные люди.
No forensic evidence at all linking either man with the bomb.
Да, нет доказательств.
No, there is no evidence.
4 months before the trial, Interpol boss Ronald Noble pointed to fingerprints connecting an unexploded bomb in 2008 with Dima.
And last night we were able to independently confirm that 4 of the finger marks of the person that committed the terrorist attack on July 4th in 2008 match the fingerprints of the person who's been arrested for the terrorist attack that occurred on April 11th. Completely different techniques in 2008 from 2011, but the same person, same terrorist.
Noble says they independently confirmed the matching fingerprints, but Interpol themselves state that both sets of prints came from Belarus. Should anyone trust the forensic service of a dictatorship? Interpol's website links to a film, Metro, made about the bomb by Belarus State TV and translated into English by them. The film does not address any of the defence's questions about the evidence, but it does show Mr. Noble being given a tour of the crime scene, and here he is, praising the investigation.
This case was solved so quickly because of the high professionalism of the police.
The Metro film also shows a victim of an alleged previous bomb by Dima in 2004.
A 14-year-old Ivan Kalutsky got into the trap set up by Konovalov.
At the beginning, there came petrol on my face, and then fire. I was all in flames, a living torch.
Stop here. Look again. If the living torch was 14 in 2004, he would be 22 now. He looks far older and has no obvious burn scars on his face. It is hard to see why Interpol thinks this film evidence of anything other than Belarus State TV being at home in George Orwell's 1984. When the Secretary-General praised the authorities for solving the crime so quickly and called Dima a terrorist, he did so 4 months before the trial. Did he abandon the presumption of innocence and open himself up to the charge of being Lukashenko's useful idiot? Brian Bennett is a former British ambassador to Belarus.
The security forces in Belarus, as you know, are very professional, well-trained, but they are part of the oppressive machinery of Lukashenko's regime. So I wouldn't like to be quoted as praising the security forces in Belarus, and I certainly wouldn't want to be praising them for coming to a conclusion before all the evidence has been presented in an open and fair way. The problem with Belarus is that nothing is open and transparent.
Mr. Noble declined to be interviewed for this programme, but a spokesman for Interpol denied that the presumption of innocence was breached and disputed our analysis of the evidence. In a statement, Interpol said that Mr. Noble concluded that the investigation was professionally conducted and that the arrest solved the case of who was criminally responsible for the bombing. They added, Advancing one-sided false claims about murderous terrorist conduct can only undermine public confidence in the media. The trial judge dismissed the defence case, and in March this year, Dima and Vlad, both aged 25, were shot with a bullet to the back of the head. Both the European Union and the British government condemned the executions and questioned the standard of evidence and the fairness of the trial. If Luba is right, then Lukashenko's regime are in the dock for the execution of two innocent men. And the question remains, if they didn't bomb the metro, who did? What of the men in the shadows on the CCTV? Who in a police state can organise a bomb? Who has the track record of political violence? One cannot rule out the Belarus state murdering its own people. I asked Luba what keeps her going.
Это не смелость. Это страх за жизнь.
It's not bravery. It's passion for the life of my son. I knew my son wasn't guilty. I knew Dima wasn't guilty. But I was powerless against the authorities. I wasn't able to do anything. I wasn't able to save the children. I couldn't do anything.
The regime has declined to tell Luba where her executed son lies buried. As I left, she said, and now they are torturing me. On my last day in the capital, I visit a museum full of discarded statues. One in particular remains hidden from view. Belarus may look modern, but its people say, don't be fooled. This isn't a country that is recovering from a Stalinist nightmare. It's a country still living one.